Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pisapia. With me today is Pat Fitzmaurice, as always, on Wednesdays, because on Wednesdays, we do rankings. That's right. We're going to take a look at Pat's rankings versus our guest versus the ECR at the running back position. What a time to be alive. Very exciting. And our guest, even more exciting, another one of my Jersey guys, just like me, where I live, even though I'm a Brooklyn guy at heart. It's Bill Enright, obviously from Sports Illustrated. Bill, it's great to have you on the show. And we always like to, at the top, press the guest. Jonathan Taylor is out. So what do people do now that Jonathan Taylor is not going to be in their lineup? What is the patch look like?
Philip Lindsay revenge game. Get ready. Right?
Excellent answer.
You got Nyheim Hines. You got Philip Lindsay there in the Colts backfield. Talk about two more disappointing offenses than the Broncos and the Colts this year. Both of these teams have been terrible. No wonder why the under is so low this week.
Now, Pat, it happens to be a decent week for waiver wire RBs. We talked about Algier and Boone and a few other guys that, even Raheem Mostert in some leagues might be floating around still. We realized that on Monday, that roster percentage is not as high as we thought it might be by now. So I guess if you're going to be without Taylor for a week, certainly you're happy you're not without him for a month. But at the same time, certainly that's something that fantasy owners are going to have to pivot real quick about.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not sure if there are any really good replacement options with the Colts. We don't know. It might be kind of a Philip Lindsay, Deion Jackson, Nyheim Hines stew against the Broncos this week. So, yeah, I mean, you're probably better off grabbing a Mike Boone, a Tyler Algier, even Rachaad White, who saw his snap share tick up a little bit in week 4. So, but yeah, the Colts running game with no Jonathan Taylor, that could be pretty gross this week.
Yeah, certainly can be. And I know it's stew season because it's the fall, but that sounds pretty gross, my friend. All right, we are going to break down the ranks. And as always, we're going to start at the running back position with the guys that our friend Pat Fitzmaurice might like a little bit more than our guest. Let's start with Khalil Herbert at the top here. Pat, you've got him at RB13. Our illustrious guest, Bill Enright, has him at RB22. ECR is right in between you guys at RB17. So, Pat, let's talk about your thoughts on Herbert for the week.
Well, I feel bad being on the wrong side of Bill here because Bill was a top 5 ranker last week, and I think I was outside the top 100. So, I guess my thought on Khalil Herbert is that he's actually the running back 13 on the year right now. Only the running back 25 in week 4, but that was because he didn't get into the end zone. I mean, we like the workload share he's getting here. Played a 77% snap share in week 4, 19 carries and 1 catch. And we like the matchup here, I think. The Vikings are 27th in run defense DVOA, and they have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So even though we're not thrilled about the Bears offense generally, I think we can feel pretty good about the workload Herbert's been getting. And, I think he should pretty much be an unconditional starter if you've got him on your roster.
All right, Bill, we talk about the matchup here against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, clearly, it looks like the Bears are going to be a lot of negative game scripts, but all they do is run the football. So, I mean, it's not that you don't think Khalil Herbert's a starter this week, but the ranking's a little lower. So do you have any concerns here with what Herbert can do in this specific contest against Minnesota?
Yeah, so I have him at 22, low end running back 2 for me. Mm-hmm. And Pat really said it. It's the lack of touchdowns, and it's not Herbert's fault. It's really the Bears offense, right? They are 31st in points per game. They're averaging 16 points per game. Minnesota's defense is in the top 12. So without that touchdown equity from Khalil Herbert and without the receptions, I mean, he has five catches all year. He's 60th in targets, 5 targets. Luckily, he caught all 5 of those passes. But even when David Montgomery was in the backfield, Matt Eberflus was just not calling passing plays to his running backs. And I judge offensive coordinators or head coaches, if they're calling the plays, based on how they use running backs in the passing game. And without that reception or receiving game action for Herbert, to me, he is a little bit more of a low-end running back 2 than a high-end or low-end running back 1.
Now, of course, as you're trying to make all these decisions about your lineups and looking at the ECR and the ranks, we've got other tools for you too at My Playbook. So we got the My Playbook cheat sheets tool that's available for you. Again, all you have to do is sync your leagues at fantasypros.com/myplaybook and use that cheat sheet tool. It is fantastic. It gives you all the rankings for all the positions. So it's convenient right there in one spot, one page. Doesn't get much better than that. And guess what? It's free. Everybody loves free stuff. I love free stuff. Pat Fitzmaurice can't get enough free stuff. I can only assume Bill likes free stuff too. I mean, Jersey guy who doesn't like free stuff, that doesn't make any sense to me. So go check out the cheat sheets at fantasypros.com/my playbook today. Again, check out that free tool. Let's get over to the next guy on the list, Kareem Hunt. RB18, Pat, you've got him. I feel like Kareem Hunt is the Rodney Dangerfield this year of the running back position. Just no matter what he does, no respect at all. Bill's got him at RB27. The ECR is even lower, RB30. Now, I get it, that maybe everybody just thinks it's all Chubb all the time, but every time it feels like that's the case, we end up falling to that trap, and it looks like Kareem Hunt has one of those big games again out of nowhere. So it's a good matchup. Talk to me about Kareem Hunt this specific week against, let's see, he's got the Los Angeles Chargers, who certainly on the defensive side are missing some pieces, to say the least.
Yeah, and it does feel like Kareem Hunt is the tag along little brother to big brother Nick Chubb, bringing him along to the playground to play some tackle football on a Sunday afternoon. But the workload for Chubb or for Hunt has been just fine. Like he's had double digit carries every week. He has 2.8 catches a game. The Browns are running the ball 53% of the time. And that's their game plan. They want to basically cover up Jacoby Brissett and not ask him to do too much. And I think they want to do that and slow the game down against the Chargers. And the Chargers they're a pretty good matchup for a running back. They've allowed the third most fantasy points to opposing running backs, the ninth most rushing yards, and the sixth most receiving yards to running backs. So no touchdowns for Kareem Hunt the last 3 weeks, but he had two the first couple of weeks, and it's not like he never gets goal line duty. He had a couple shots at it in week 3, got stuffed at the goal line a couple of times, and then I think they brought in Nick Chubb on fourth down to punch it into the end zone. But I like the workload here, and Hunt is number 22, RB22 on the season. So I don't think my ranking is too out of line, and the matchup looks pretty good.
Yeah, 8 half PPR points the last 3 weeks in a row. The 2 touchdowns came in week 1 against Carolina when he finished RB5. After that, RB27, 32, and 37. Now, look, if he gets in the end zone, certainly that's a huge plus here. We're talking about, a different ranking here potentially for Kareem Hunt. But the workload is very steady, Bill. At this point, when we're missing so many RBs and so many guys have been hurt and we have Javonte Williams out for the year. We know Jonathan Taylor. We have all these guys kind of floating around, all these newbies too, coming off the waiver wire. Kareem Hunt seems like a pretty solid play this week to me. What are your thoughts on this matchup he's got against the Chargers? Maybe a little bit more upside than people realize, but you don't seem to see that.
I think based on my rankings, I have him as a flex option for running back, right? He's at 27, which is really what he has been. Right outside that 24 range. For running backs, to me, that's exactly what Kareem Hunt has proven thus far. And it's because Nick Chubb has been absolutely incredible. Pat brought up the lack of touchdowns for Kareem Hunt. Hunt has 3 less attempts inside the 20 compared to Nick Chubb. It's a 57, 40, 39% split between the two of them. Those numbers don't add up, whatever it is.
It's an excellent math there, Bill. Let's
call it 60-40 between the two. Hunt has 3 less
attempts way easier. Yeah, let's
inside the 20, but he has 4 less touchdowns, right? And we saw him get stuffed at the goal line a few times in week 4 against the Falcons. And without that touchdown equity, I think he is a consistent producer. And that, to me, what makes him more of a flex option than a surefire running back 2 for your fantasy team that belongs in the top 24. If you're starting him as a flex, you're fine with his average points per game, which, he's right in that 22-ish range on a point per game basis, 12.6 fantasy points per game. You're fine with that for your flex. And then if he does score a touchdown, that's a bonus, right? That's even better because it's exceeding your expectations. But by ranking him at 27, I feel like I'm alerting people, hey, this guy's a flex option. Sure, he has that touchdown upside if he gets there, but you're not ranking him ahead of the guys that are a little bit more consistent in terms of the PPR points per game percentages.
Yeah, actually, there's a couple guys on your list that you're higher on than Pat in the ECR that I think curious to see if you'd play over Kareem Hunt this week. We'll have to ask that in a second. That's a tease, folks. That's what they call in the business. Breece Hall, the New York Jets, this week against Miami. Pat, you've got him at RB20. Our guest Bill Enright has him at RB35. The ECR is closer to you, Pat, but at 26, still kind of in the middle. Now, Breece Hall certainly did see an uptick in terms of the carry volume. By far his highest rush attempt, 17 this past week. He also had 6 targets on that game. He only caught 2 of them, of course, and he did have a touchdown, so that helped. So, Pat, what are your thoughts on the workload here for Breece Hall? Is this trending upward in the right direction, or was last week the anomaly?
No, I think it's trending in the right direction and will continue to remain so. Like, I think we need to rank him as a running back 2 every week now. And this might just be a stepping stone en route to him being ranked as an RB1 every week. Like 66% snap share last week. The season high 17 carries. You mentioned the 6 targets. He's got 27 targets on the season. And lest we think that was just like a Joe Flacco phenomenon, like 6 targets last year with Zach Wilson, or last week with Zach Wilson at quarterback. The matchup's kind of tough though. Like Miami has allowed the 3rd fewest rushing yards. Defensive tackles Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer are really tough. They're good at clogging the middle. But they are tied for the 5th most running back receptions allowed this season. So, you know, maybe even if the going is a little bit tough for Hall on the ground, he can still give you a fantasy floor because of his pass catching ability. And, you know, he's just leaving Michael Carter in the dust in this backfield. Like, this is Breece Hall's backfield now.
All right, so Bill, let's talk about Breece Hall for you. You've got him obviously further down the trough right now, and it's understandable. The Jets offense certainly still has some things to work out, but it seems like the arrow's pointing up for Breece Hall. You've got him still in that flex conversation. Obviously, it's still in there, but are we on the precipice of big things, or was last week just a blip on the radar?
I think it's really tough to analyze this backfield without a little bit more of a sample size with Zach Wilson under center, because heading into week 4, they're 28th in rushing yards per game, but that was with Joe Flacco. The great things about Breece Hall, Pat mentioned a bunch of them. Matt Harmon from Yahoo just gave out a great stat in his article this week. Breece Hall, I think, leads the NFL or leads all positions in targets per route run, and his 4.24 air yards per target is like the best since something like 2016. So as long as those efficiency metrics keep coming, add a little bit more volume to it, and then all of a sudden, I think you are right, Pat, that he can be in that running back 1 conversation. I haven't seen it yet. His 78 yards from scrimmage in week 4 against the Steelers, that was a season high. And without the touchdowns, and this is a theme for the first 3 running backs that I'm lower on, the touchdowns aren't there. Derrick Henry has 7 rushing attempts inside the 20-yard line. Breece Hall has 6. Breece Hall has 1 touchdown. Derrick Henry has 3. That's the difference between being a running back 1 and a little bit outside of that RB2 territory for me. But if those touchdowns come, if Zach Wilson starts to open up this offense, which I think he can, then we'll start seeing Breece Hall climb up my rankings a little bit. But I'm a prove it to me guy first, and then I'll follow. I'm not going to go out on an edge on a rookie with a quarterback that's just back for his 2nd game against a good Dolphins defense in terms of the run. Pat pointed out some really great stats there. They have the 6th lowest rushing touchdown percentage. Joe Mixon had a decent game, Joe Mixon had a decent game against the Dolphins in week 4 on that Thursday night. But we'll see if Hall can get into the end zone this week.
Yeah, that's usually Pat's MO, by the way, is the prove it to me. So it's nice to bring in somebody else who has that same MO. Also, extra points, Pat, for using the phrase "lest we forget." That was very Shakespearean of you. I really appreciate that. Let's flip the script here on the boys.
Special.
Yeah, let's flip the script here and talk about some guys that Bill likes more than Pat. Let's start with Melvin Gordon III. You've got him as RB12 this week. That's a pretty high ranking. Consensus has him, Bill, at RB23. Pat's at 29. So, Bill, defend the honor here of Melvin Gordon III.
Thursday night special. Melvin Gordon loves the primetime games on Thursday night. 4 touchdowns in his last 3 Thursday night games, 7 touchdowns in his last 8 games in Denver. He loves playing at home, loves playing in front of that mile high audience. I think without Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon will be the guy in week 5. Going forward, maybe it's a little bit of Latavius Murray, maybe it's some Mike Boone in action, but for week 5, it will be the Melvin Gordon show.
All right, so throwing out some primetime stats. Gordon's had some fumble issues, though, Pat. Is this kind of the get back on track moment for Gordon? Because it seems like ECR and everybody's just kind of sitting back a little bit. Bill's very confident. What do you throw out here right now? What do you actually threw at you make you a little bit more confident in moving him up your ranks?
Yeah, and it does feel kind of bad that I'm a University of Wisconsin guy and I'm ranking Melvin Gordon below the ECR.
How dare you?
I know, that just feels traitorous.
How do you show up at alumni meetings? What do you do?
So, and Bill might be right that they're going to go to him heavily. Broncos offensive coordinator Justin Outen has said that Gordon would, quote, carry the load, obviously, unquote. So, that makes you think so. I do worry a little bit about the fumbling issue. It's gotten to be kind of a problem for Gordon. He's fumbled 4 times in his last 4 games and 5 in his last 5 games. If you go back to the season finale last year when he coughed one up that they lost, just a sloppy fumble against the Raiders that led to a fumble 6 and really kind of the play of the game that, you could argue that lost the Broncos the game last week. So I don't think he gets punished for that, especially after the Javonte Williams injury. I do think they're going to give it to him quite a bit. But, Indianapolis is second in DVOA against the run. It's a really tough matchup. They're allowing 3.1 yards per carry. I do think he's going to get a lot of work, but right now he's averaging under 4 yards a carry. We haven't seen much juice out of Melvin or out of this Denver offense generally. So I'm a little bit cautious, and it does feel like I've got him too low. But then, like, looking at the guys ahead of him, I don't know who I want to move below him. Like, I have the Patriots.
That's true, right? Because you got guys like Damien Harris we're going to talk about next. Like, there's some other guys that have really good matchups. So I guess that's the difficult thing there. But then again, in this matchup on Thursday night, without Jonathan Taylor, my goodness, that Colts offense already seems to be having a lot of issues. So who knows, maybe more opportunities. It's definitely a tough one because, once again, we haven't quite seen it yet. Let's talk more about Damien Harris, because that's definitely one of those dudes this week that I think is moving up. In ECR, he's 21. You've got him, Bill, at 19. Pat's got him at 28, so he's still not quite in love with the matchup enough, or maybe the split of that backfield. So let's talk about Damien Harris in this matchup against the Lions, because the Lions so far making every running back look like a stud.
That's the main thing for me. It's just that the fact that everyone is running over this Detroit Lions defense. They're giving up the second most fantasy points to running backs. They have allowed 8 rushing touchdowns this year, almost double than any other team. I think the next closest team was 5, and then everyone else was like 4, 4, 4, 3. The Lions have allowed 8 touchdowns already. 3 straight games with a touchdown for Damien Harris, 10 rushing touchdowns in his last 6 home games. I think Damien Harris gets into the end zone twice this week. The stats back that up. The Patriots are on their 3rd string quarterback, so look for them to rely on their rushing attack a little bit more this week. I'm not saying as a bold prediction or a hot take. Damien Harris, he's going to score 2 touchdowns this week.
Well, yeah, it doesn't feel like a hot take at all. This matchup against the Lions, Rashad Penny just ran roughshod around them. And look, Bailey Zappi being the quarterback, as excited as I was for that last week, everybody knew who watches the show, I did not want to see any more Brian Hoyer as a Patriots fan. I've seen enough. I just, I want to see what Bailey Zappi could do. Let's have some fun out there. Let's enjoy life. And clearly they're going to run the football a ton in this game. So, Pat, is your lower ranking based on what you feel Ramondre Stevenson might eat into this workload, or just a collective of what if he doesn't score the touchdowns? Is Harris too touchdown dependent? How do you adjust this one in your mind? Because ECR is definitely higher than you.
Yeah, and certainly that's it, that it's a shared backfield with Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. And it is that Harris is very TD dependent. We know that, and isn't going to give you much as a pass catcher, although I think he does have like 7 receptions already, which, is certainly over expectation for him. But yes, it's all about the matchup. And on one hand, you've got this Detroit defense that's just terrible, and they've given up a league high 8 TD runs, and they're just bad against the run generally. But you've got this Patriots offense, very limited. Like, how do we adjust there? Like, how many points are we expecting them to score against this bad defense? Like, can they? I don't think they can turn it into a track meet. even with the bad Detroit defense. Like, I just don't think they have the firepower at quarterback to do that. So Damien Harris might indeed score 2 rushing touchdowns and make me look like a big fat idiot for being way below consensus. I think if he doesn't score any touchdowns, like, this is going to look like a brilliant ranking, having him in running back 3 territory. The expectation is probably like closer to 1, in which case I'm still behind. But like, I just, this is generally not the formula I want to chase. TD dependent for a guy who's in a backfield by committee, even though the matchup is very appealing, no question.
All right, the next guy on the list that Bill is higher on than consensus and Pat by a large margin. It's Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Cowboys, against the Rams this week. The Rams licking their wounds after another tough loss to the 49ers. Talk about being someone's daddy. It definitely feels like the 49ers are that for the Rams, especially in season. Bill, you've got him at RB21, consensus at 29. Pat's got him at 32. I've got him at 29 also. Look, it is real tough to have faith in Zeke right now. So I want to understand why you still have any.
I want a mulligan on this one.
Okay.
When we were doing our rankings, I was under the assumption that Dak Prescott was going to play. So I will be adjusting him. I'm not going to move him past probably 26. I'll probably move him down 5 spots.
All right. Well, at 26, you're still a little higher. So let's see. What's the thought process here in this offense right now?
So here's what I do with Zeke Elliott, and really the same thing with Tony Pollard. Who would I start over him? The guys, if I group them together in a tier, I would tend to put someone like Zeke at the top of that tier, even though it might be in tier 3 or tier 4. So that's what I did when I was ranking Ezekiel Elliott. I thought Dak Prescott was going to play. Obviously, we know that he's not now. The Rams are incredible against the run. They didn't really play a whole lot of ballers at the running back position. Devin Singletary and Zach Moss in week 1, Cordero Patterson, a banged up James Conner. We saw Jeff Wilson get into the end zone against them in week 4. So I do think the Cowboys, who look incredible with Cooper Rush, by the way,
he keeps winning a game. We might not see Dak Prescott if he keeps winning games.
Yeah. So I do think there's going to be some points in this game, and just something tells me that it could be one of those weird, like we saw against the Giants. CeeDee Lamb gets tackled at the 1-yard line, and Ezekiel Elliott comes in and scores a touchdown. I can see that happening 1 or 2 times in this game. So again, I apologize about the 21st ranking, but I'm not going to have him outside 26. But that's probably a little bit more in line with where I'd go with him.
Bill said something fascinating here, which is something I think is I would say probably a consensus thought process as well. That, well, when Dak comes back, Zeke's value raises a little bit. Does it, Pat, or is that a huge potential trap?
I think it does climb a little bit just because we get a greater touchdown expectation for him with Dak at quarterback. And really that's, I think Zeke has turned into a touchdown dependent running back right now because you're not getting much else from him. You're getting 3.8 yards per carry right now. And the pass catching, which is really what used to make Zeke special. Like, he gave you plenty on the ground, but then he also added a lot as a pass catcher. And this year he has 5 catches for 27 yards. And I think he was in negative yardage until this past week. Bill mentioned the Rams they've allowed the fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, although, maybe have not faced like the heavy hitters at the position yet. I don't know. That's the thing with Cooper Rush at quarterback. They are not going to score 30 or 40 points this week. And with that reduced touchdown expectation for Zeke, I don't think there's much to hang your hat on.
All right, let's talk about a couple guys that I am a little higher on the consensus, see where the experts are. We're going to play a little game here. We're going to put everybody on the clock. You each have 30 seconds or less to talk about this one guy. You go over the 30, I cut you off. It's going to be a fun thing. And then we'll hit our mailbag, and then we'll head out. So first guy on the list, and the clock begins, Zeke's running mate, Tony Pollard. I've got him at 25. ECR's at 35. I'm much higher. Pat, where do you have Tony Pollard this week?
I think I'm right at ECR at 35. Just bad matchup. Averaging 9 carries and just over 3 targets a game. So he's big play dependent. And I just don't like his odds of getting those big plays against a pretty good defense.
Okay, Bill, your thoughts on Tony Pollard this week? Obviously, you think Zeke's getting touchdowns, and you're probably low on him as well.
I have him at 33. I think what Pat said is absolutely spot on. I do think his value gets a lot better once Dak Prescott is back under center. Zeke, maybe a little bit. Pollard, much, much better.
All right, so a little silver lining there. Very well done. Next guy, A.J. Dillon. I've got him at 21. ECR's got him at 25. Again, not too different. Bill, where do you have A.J. Dillon this week in your ranks?
I have him ranked 29th. The Giants are actually doing a pretty decent job against running backs. We saw what happened. Christian McCaffrey, Khalil Herbert. They kept Herbert out of the end zone. He only caught one pass. Something tells me that it's going to be a big Aaron Rodgers day to these rookie receivers and Allen Lazard. That's where the Giants defense gets exploited the most. It's not in the rushing game. It's the short intermediate passing.
All right, Pat, you're on the clock for A.J. Dillon. Go.
Joe, we spent the whole offseason agreeing on A.J. Dillon, so why should we stop now? I mean, I've got him at running back 25, so we're on ECR, but you want to move him up 4 spots, and I'm totally good with that. Like he hasn't really clicked with the touchdowns yet, but 14.3 carries a game, 3.5 targets a game, and there should be a run-friendly game script against the Giants with the Packers as big favorites.
Okay, listener mailbag time. This is straight from our fantasypros.com/chat, our Discord. It's free to join, but as a premium member, you get access to stages, AMAs, and of course, the touchdown contest where we're giving away stuff to our shop. We're giving away Stephon Diggs jersey last month. Crazy fun things. Go get involved. Join the Discord. This is from the Tilted Hippo. Would you trade Jonathan Taylor for Kamara and AJ Brown? Is that a deal you're ready to do, Bill Enright?
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat. Wow, no hesitation there. How about you, Pat? JT for Kamara and AJ Brown.
Yeah, like I'm not a big Kamara guy, and but like the Colts are not going to be what we thought they were going to be on offense. We have to lower our expectations for Taylor too, and I think big drop off from Taylor to Kamara still, but boy, AJ Brown more than bridges that gap, I think.
All right, Bill Enright, everybody. You can follow him on the Twitter machine at Bill Enright. Thank goodness he was able to get that. There wasn't like 17 different ones. And of course, check out all his great work at Sports Illustrated. Really great video work, especially that he does. Go check it out. Bill, it was great to have you on the show today. Pat, as always, fun. And of course, go to fantasypros.com/rankings to look at all the ranks for the weeks. And don't forget about fantasypros.com/myplaybook, where you can use those free cheat sheets, that tool part of my playbook for free. Sync your league and take a look at the cheat sheets and let it help you make adjustments to your lineup today. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Pat and Bill, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.